And this thing flipped up through my thumb. Okay, folks, just a reminder, we are live streaming, so if you have something to say, please come up to the microphone. And so everybody can hear up, and that's at the podium. But with that, we will call the meeting to order and we'll rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. It's a rare time when we don't have our meeting on the first Tuesday of the month, but I think we can all understand we weren't going to come on the 4th. So we're on the 5th. And the first thing we've got up is public forum. If anybody wishes to speak in public forum. I don't see the room full of people jumping up and down for that. Next is the agenda. We've got a few additions.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if we could add consent agenda item 0, an exempt permit for Ducks Unlimited. And then if we could add regular agenda item 2.1, a joint powers agreement with the state of Minnesota for the work release services for the jail. And if we could add as the first item on the regular agenda, an introduction of Joanna Getches, who's the administrative assistant for extension.
I'll make a motion to accept the
Second.
Got a motion made by Lovegren, second by Ludwig to approve the agenda as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're looking for approval of the minutes of the June 13th, 2023 special meeting, committee of the whole. And the June 20th county board minutes for summary for publication.
One second.
Motion by Ludwig, second by Waldham. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? And then board reports and correspondence, Pine County Surveyor's Report from June of 2023 and the Pine County Zoning Board Minutes from May 25th of 2023.
so moved.
Second.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll move on to the consent agenda. We've had that in front of us for several days.
Ludwig will move. I'll second.
Motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We'll move on to regular agenda and Joanna.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
members of the board, special thank you to Commissioner Lovegren for suggesting we do this. And Joanna has been on board for about 3 weeks now. And she moved to Pine County in 1999 and attended private school in Hinckley. She participated in community theater programs and at one time kept horses. Prior to joining Extension with Pine County, she worked as a manager for Grand Cinema at Hinckley for 12 years. And she lives in Hinckley with her husband, Andy, and their son, Jasper. Many of us know Andy because he's an IT technician for the county as well. And then she loves film and going on nature adventures with their family. And in the 3 weeks that she's been with us, I think she's already made an impact. And we're just very excited that we were able to fill the position so quickly with somebody so talented.
Welcome, Joe.
Welcome, Joanna.
No.
You don't have to make a speech.
You're gonna learn not to listen to Kelly that much. No.
This is where that theater background comes in handy.
Well, welcome aboard.
Yes.
We're glad to have you. Thanks. All right, we'll move on to the Midwest Medical Examiner. Our annual report from Dr. Quinn Piper.
Thank you,
Morning.
Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. Yes,
Morning.
Dr. Piper, recent name change. We're all aware. I'm here to present a very brief summary of the deaths that occurred in Pine County that were reported to and the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office was involved in. In 2022, our office investigated 207 deaths in Pine County. There we are. Of those 207 deaths, 18% or 37 were what we call assumed by the medical examiner. That's where the medical examiner was responsible for either doing further investigation and or an autopsy and signing the death certificate. So we did that for 37. In 2021, there were 48 such assumed deaths. We have a new case management system, and so the reports do look a little different this time. And then we're also adding a medical record review category for our exam type, since that is one way that we do get information to sign death certificates. So for 2022, we performed 8 complete autopsies, 4 what we call partial, 10 where we just looked at the external body surfaces. 1 was an incident of someone found bones and they were deemed non-human. And then lastly, we did 14 what we call medical record reviews. That's where someone either passes away from an accidental death, but doesn't need an autopsy, or a natural death and doesn't have a doctor or a doctor who will sign. And so we review their medical records and use the information from there to sign the death certificate. Of the examinations and reviews that we did, this is the list of manners of death for last year, and the blue bar is the preceding year, 2021. So some notables for 2022, there was 1 homicide, 15 deaths attributed to accident, and 9 suicides. So the suicide numbers did increase over double of 2021. The one significantly positive change between 2021 and 2022, if you can see there, of the deaths classified as accident, there were 3 attributed to substance use, whereas in 2021 there were 12. So obviously a very significant decrease there.
You think that's the availability of the naloxone or the?
It certainly could be many, many different factors, but that's what I was thinking. It's possibly that, you know, because individuals have it. I think first responders have it. So I think that seems to make a significant difference. Hopefully education about what you may or may not be using has helped, you know, for the presence of fentanyl and such. But yeah, 2021 was a rough year all around, to be honest, for most of our counties. Most counties seem to have had a better year of 2022. And then lastly, of the accidents, again, what we call blunt force injuries, 5 of those were due to motor vehicle crashes. And that's the brief summary. If anybody has any questions for me.
Any more questions?
No, that's good.
The suicide rate, is that 9? Is that high, low? Like,
Well, for Pine, again, it was, significantly higher than 2021. And with this new case management system, hopefully we'll have, next year, obviously we'll see 3 years together and then so on. And so then we'll see again, it was easier because before we always had a 5-year outlook. And so we'll just see, how it goes. And sometimes there's no, identifiable, reason specifically that, an individual decides to do that, it's very, very personal, very varying among the individuals.
Does it seem out of the ordinary with a county of 30,000 people, or is that?
Again, some years are just higher than others, for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll move on to probation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Terry Fawcett, Pine County Probation Director. This reminds me of the time I had to follow a canine dog at a training. And the dog could jump up on the table and I thought, how do I top that? So,
You make space?
yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Here's our annual numbers. The first slide is just our mission statement, which is reflective of both county language as well as our 10th judicial district. I don't think I need my glasses today. I always like to highlight some of what I think is some really good reflections of our department. Reese and I are able to present again at the American Probation and Parole Association Conference in Omaha back in the winter specifically on our evening reporting center. And then recently I was out in San Diego, was asked to be part of a juvenile justice conference on community-led diversion. There's a corresponding research paper on that. Some work that Reese has done with the John Jay College out in New York was cited in that, and probably 4 of the different initiatives that we got going on here in Pine County have been cited in that research paper. So Reese and I are very proud of that work. I mean, that's I think something that hopefully everybody's proud of, the fact that Little Pine County gets recognized nationally and people come to us now to say, how can we do things better? So we'll have more on that in a little bit, but we had a senior agent selected as a trainer in the use of carry guides. Department participated in our JDI systems assessment. We just had the initial feedback on that, which was favorable. 2 of my senior agents received awards at the annual MACPO conference. One of them for the Outstanding Performance Award. That's the 2nd year in a row that a Pine County agent has received that. I'm very proud of that. And then 2 senior agents selected as decision points, statewide trainers. So we have now 2 or 3 trainers in our office that are training at the state level on different curriculums that we do. That one in particular, very, very difficult to get selected for that. In fact, the authors of the curriculum had to come in from Colorado and observe to see how they do it and make sure that they're doing it the way it's supposed to be and so forth. So again, I think some shining moments. The JDI systems assessment, I'll talk more about a little bit later, but we're hoping to take some of that good work that has been done on the juvenile side and kind of turn that into a contract with what used to be the Department of Corrections will now be moved over to Metro State and keeping our evening reporting center in place. So stay tuned on that. Welcome, Rod.
He's stealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New offender entries on probation, we had 531 this year. It's based on a probation survey that Sherry does all the legwork on that. It's the Department of Corrections sends us out an initial report. There's usually some cases in there that don't belong to this department, that belong to the DOC, and there's some tweaking that has to go on and kind of gives you the number of new cases that were put on to us in the last year. With the caveat, it doesn't include all the things listed up there. Most of the juvenile stuff, restorative justice and petty and traffic offenders. So it's just another way of looking at it. 39 juveniles, 256 misdemeanors. And I think gross misdemeanors, 236, 256 misdemeanors. That snapshot, 1070 total offenders, but that would include the DOC on there too. So when you get alarmed, you see 22 sex offenses. That's not this department. Most of that belongs are felony level sex offenses, so they're Department of Corrections cases. Corrections fees. So this one has been a hot topic. Commissioner Ludwig has been in the middle of this discussion. So this is kind of the fees that have generated from the department this last year. $54,000 in local corrections fees, which was something that was created by the legislature 20 some years ago. And now kind of through the new funding agreement, that's to be sunsetted by 2027. Obviously, a lot of concerns around that. I think the most immediate concern is if you look at our other numbers of monies generated in departments, not a lot, but it is a lot when you have a small department who has, for example, I'll use lead as an example, $5,600 in lead. So 5 years ago or so, I came to the board and said, could we build our training, but a line item just a little bit more so agents can be trained adequately? Well, that was built through the LEAD program, and we'll talk more about LEAD in a bit. And so when you start to, so what the legislature did was said, well, local corrections fees should be sunsetted by 2027. But then when you got the language of the bill, it talks about all fees should be sunsetted. That wasn't the agreement. So that'll be the work to be done in the next session. For the legislature to say, well, you shouldn't charge pretrial fees or COG skills fees or lead fees or ream fees. To me, that should be a local decision and not one through the legislature. You know, there are, you know, if somebody tests positive for a year analysis, we send that in. We're the one, we order the cups for that type of thing, and it costs money, but
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So we're gonna meet in July and the door's open on this.
Okay.
For us to fight. That's why they put those years in there. So it would be helpful for me to have some kind of data that, you know, how many times you waive the fee based on what you can, you know what I mean? So it isn't like we're taking money from people that can't afford it. I think that's what's hanging them up.
yes.
You know, why are we pulling money from people? So is there a way that we could get that number in some way, shape, or how, or a percent, some loose, something to give me something to argue?
Well, I know Sherry's taking notes back there. So
I don't know if I'm making sense what I'm asking for, but.
yes, we get a packet. So if a client believes that they don't have the ability to pay, they work with their agent, they submit me a packet, I review it and either approve it. Sometimes I partially approve it and sometimes I totally waive it. And so there's a means to that.
And then it's an impact to us too, my organization, because that almost pays for a probation officer. in the
Right.
end. So
Yes.
it's a good chunk.
Yeah.
So. Thank you.
I like what Matt's asking, but is there any way to get data that says if a person has some skin in the game, they gotta cough up some money, that they tend to be more interested in completing the program? I don't know how you extract that data, but
I'm not sure that's possible, but I can tell you when I was a young agent and corrections fees came about, that was how I felt, right? You know, well, I first felt that we shouldn't add more fees on to clients. And then that started to change and I understood why that is. And, but I believe when the legislature, you know, enacted local corrections fees, that was one of the rationale way back when was for that
Ability.
accountability.
Right.
Well, now it's kind of flipped it on its head and said, well, now we're just charging people for money that we shouldn't be charging them and they don't have the ability to pay. But the fact of the matter is very few, and I'll get you that number, it's a little easier to get, but very few people come and ask to have that fee waived. You know, most have the ability to pay, you know, and then it can also be collected through revenue recapture if they're supposed to pay it and don't, but you know, it's a major concern with the bigger counties who have, you know, you start, and to your point, Commissioner, I look at that and I say, well, that's almost a position, right? At least salary wise. So some counties, the bigger counties, I always use Wright County as an example. Wright County has put local corrections fees into a major part of their budget to the, to the sum of $1 million. Arrowhead Regional Corrections. I mean, that's St. Louis County. It's $1 million+ a year that comes into Arrowhead Regional Corrections through local corrections fees. And without it, where do you find that? And that's the concern going forward. Some of the other counties, I think Ramsey just got rid of it. Again, bigger tax base. There's other ways. Ramsey can just say, well, we don't need corrections fees, and that looks really good politically, but they also have other ways of getting some income to make up for the loss of corrections fees. I think Washington recently got rid of corrections fees as well. But again, talking to Washington County and Stillwater and Woodbury and, some.
Yeah, Josh.
But also does that kind of open it up to, well, if I'm gonna offend or whatever, I'm gonna go where there's no fees, maybe not. I would think the penalties, so. To get to a different question I have, just because I'm very not familiar with this, so if I'm on probation, what kind of fees am I looking at? Or how do you get to that $54,000? Is it like a flat fee? Anybody that's on probation pays?
Yeah, it's, can you remind me of that, Sherry? It's yeah, $10 a month. It's based on a file.
Okay.
So a lot of people refer to it as probation fees. It's really because you're opening a file on that case and it corresponds. Some places, is it still corresponded to level of charge? It used to be, and probably an ARC when I was up there, but if you're a felon, you were charged more and so forth. Now, we simplified that several years back here, and it's, and then the other fees are just as they are, you're paying to be on pretrial. ISP, there's heavy supervision that goes with that, so an ISP fee, so you have 1.5 agents in my department do intensive supervision. Well, intensive supervision is just what it sounds like, right? It takes more people power to be out in the field to do that with higher risk clients. More UAs being done, that type of thing. And so there's a $700, is it $700? Somewhere around there, $700 fee that goes along with that to try to compensate for that. So.
I got something. What's lead?
Uh,
Lead, what's this?
I'll let Reese define it. Reese came up with this acronym.
Oh,
Local education for accountable decisions. That's our first time DWI offender program, education only. So the way that we set things up in Pine County is if you're a DWI offender, it's your first time you're going to that program. And you usually have to go to the MAD Victims Impact Panel as well. You come back again, then you go to our our Driving with Care program, and we'll talk about that as we get through the PowerPoint here, but.
So I guess what I'm hearing is there's fees associated with crime, and some people, you don't get many, but some people feel they should not have to pay the fee, or.
Yeah, there are legitimately some people that when the agent comes to me with that packet and I look at it and I go, they have no money, and this person's really trying, right?
But there's, I mean, just, I don't know, it's getting off point here, but there's other crimes that there's a fee that is like your vehicle gets taken. That's a pretty big fee. And that's just like, it's just the way it is,
I agree with you.
so. that's
I,
what-
I, I agree with you that.
And they don't have, sometimes they gotta get to work the next day, and I'm just not directed towards you or anything. I'm just making a comment.
And my comment to that, Commissioner, would be, I look at some of the packets and I see a person who's 25 years old that doesn't have any mental health issues, who has a job. But the fact that they have to pay another fee that they don't like to pay, I have heartburn with that, and I deny it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, but there are some that come through legitimately that the person's struggling with mental health.
Yeah.
They're in treatment, they're doing well, and they just try to say, well, this person really doesn't have any money. And is this just gonna exacerbate mental health issues? It just, we don't make that much money where it's, what I mean? It's just, we should be real about it too.
You waive quite a few.
Yeah.
We waive them, yeah.
Well, and then like, then there's somewhere, you know, the vehicles just, there's a fee, boom, you lose you commit a crime, you lose this, that's just the way it is. But
And I
I'm
can
trying to
tell
get
you,
my mind wrapped around the,
And
I sign no more than 10 waivers a year.
Yeah.
No more than 10 a year.
Yeah.
And I can, 7 of them come from one agent because she deals with a certain population where, you know, a lot of domestic abusers kind of fall in that category and.
you're on this committee.
And I think it's one of those issues we'll have to work on legislatively because we aren't the deciders,
Right.
you know, obviously.
So anyway, there's a good background on that.
I want to say I would take their money when they'd come to our counter, or I would write the receipts. And because it's me, I would always say, well, are you going to think about this again? Never think about this when you think about acting again. And they would always say, yeah, because they had to pay for it. It did create it where they were going to think twice before they did it again, and so there is a benefit to it.
And when they get upset is when they just think it goes away
Yeah.
and then revenue recapture takes it. That's usually about the time we hear about it, you know.
Yeah.
So. I won't get too much into out of home placement numbers because that was a separate report here a few months ago, but kind of the thing on that $378,000. 4 budget busters accounted for most of that. Otherwise, our kids in Pine County are spending an average of 9 days in detention. So I think Sherry and Devin do a great job of monitoring that and making sure just the right people are being referred to detention or out of home placement. And we've had a couple real difficult cases here in the last couple of years, but restorative justice, our C5 case completions, we've had 81 successful out of 97 referrals. There's some other reasons on why people have been kind of moved on to a different program or so on, but up until 2021, 69 completed, only 8 reoffended post completion. Some more of an average length of time to complete it is about 89 days. My work out in San Diego and talking to some other programs nationally, that's really about the average. And I felt good about that we weren't letting kids off too early here. It just seemed, and I always tell kids we do what I call right sizing. When we believe that you've changed and you're done, you'll be done. I'm not going to keep you on forever because for whatever reason, and that's supported by the county attorney's office. And we've had 60 refer to us pre-charge, which I'm proud of that number. It's also, I think, a good reflection of the county attorney's office that says, you know what, we're willing to take a look at kids and try to keep them out of the criminal justice system from being justice involved. And so some other numbers, again, average 89 days, 12% recidivism, 1 year post completion, 67% male, 60% pre-charge, and then restitution. I just updated these numbers. We had another kid come in and pay in full $733.33. So we've collected out of this program $3,800 fully paid, 9 juveniles fully paid. So even though some of the kids, I don't keep them on until they pay that restitution off and it's pre-charge. And the fact that they're pre-charged, they don't get paid through the court administrator's office, they get paid through probation. And even the kids that, most of the kids that have been ordered restitution, have been pre-charged, have paid that amount to the victim, which is extremely important. Truancies, this is a problem that's probably only getting worse. It's really become a problem as a result of the pandemic. As this board knows, we've done a really good job in this county of trying to be different in terms of how we deal with habitual truants, where we meet with the kids around a table with the assistant county attorney, the judge, school personnel, probation, social workers. Really have about a half-hour conversation with the kid versus a 5-minute court hearing. That model still exists, although I know Reese is probably struggling with it too, because it's labor intensive to his staff. It's labor intensive to my staff. It's labor intensive to the judge, quite frankly. We had 9 truancies filed in 2018. And in 2023, to date, there's been 23, and Sydney indicates that that could double by end of the year, by December. There were 26 last year, 27 in 2021. And so, you know, I know when Judge Reuter was here, he talked about Sydney and the canary and the coal mine, you know, and it really got me to think differently about truancy and it's the entryway in the criminal justice system is what it is. And so I hope in the coming months that I can have a conversation with Reese and other system partners to say, how do we try to keep this in place? And so we'll see, but I was supervising a lot of these habitual truants, and then that caseload went down, moved them over to Devon, and now they're spiking again, and we'll probably be back doing truancy work myself as a result of the need, so. Some other examples on why I think we're different. We completed several equine assisted learning sessions to understand conflict, not only with truants, we've done this with some of our C5 cases as well. The same kid, when he completed, Sherry offered an incentive. They had a washing machine that had become a huge problem in the family. Kid would wash the clothes so much that he broke it. And we ordered a part after we got approval for that, but said, you know, as part of your completion of C5, you and stepdad need to put that part in together. After they had done several sessions over with the horses doing equine assisted learning too. So couple of, you know, different resources and opportunities in Pine County that we have that maybe others don't, I think have been great. And clever POs, you know, such as Sherry and Devon to be able to work that and actually go over there with the kids while they're doing it. It's important. And then our judge, you know, for Judge Wynn to be engaged as she's been, you know, says a lot. It was one of the things that when I was in San Diego, we talked about, and there was a judge on that panel. And one of the things that I brought up is I still see as a problem in my work, in probation work, is our systems are busy. So you have judicial systems that are very busy. You have probation departments that are very busy. You have HHS departments that are very busy. And nobody wants to slow down enough to have a conversation about how we can do better, deeper work than just processing a case. And I think until systems get together and have those conversations about how can we, you know, they do that at a certain level, even in Minnesota, when you talk about drug court or different types of specialty courts, that's kind of a good model of in our truancy court about how we can work together slower, that has better outcomes for people. But if you don't do that across the board, in my opinion, you just process cases, you don't work deeper with families, and then you have the same problems. And so, but having a judge at the table has been great. Detention, a risk assessment instrument. So we've been doing this at first appearance. Sherry or Devon do this along with the assistant county attorney. And now as of August 1st, this is in legislation where now the East Central Regional Juvenile Center will have to do it at time of arrest. So whether or not the sheriff knew that, I don't know, but hopefully that's not going to be an issue. I think there's language built in that says they can override the juvenile center and say, sorry, your officer can say, no, they're going to stay, that type of thing. But I think it's good in terms of, I mean, risk assessments are evidence-based. It's so we're only lodging kids that should be lodged. So you don't get a disproportionate amount of, you know, American Indian or African-American kids that are being lodged and the white kids can go home. That's another reason why risk assessments are out there. But it was always done here at first appearance, and now it'll be done at time of arrest. So as of August 1st.
Is there an override built in if they say no and the cops say, no, you gotta?
Yes, but they're still trying to figure out which tool they're going to use. They haven't picked one yet.
Okay, so the department can have some input there.
Yes, yeah. That's always the first question that comes about, because you want to be a deputy who's driven great length to
Exactly.
get down there and says, we're in a logic hit, and they're going to tell you no. It's becomes an issue.
Yeah.
So rightfully so. This kind of shows that the right kids are being detained. 15 plus on array, 75% of them are staying in the juvenile center. Medium risk kids, 44%. And then there's graduated sanctions. So what a PO recommends is a judge ultimately ordering what is being recommended. 90, almost 97% recommendation is in accordance with the response grid. So the agents have a grid that says, this is kind of what we should look at recommending. That's what they're recommending 97% of the time. And then the court is ordering almost 99% of the time what an agent is recommending. So you look at those things for a few reasons. Bigger jurisdictions, sometimes you might have a judge who may be a little more heavy handed than somebody else. And you can track those things through stuff like this, but agents do good work here and the judges are fair. Evening reporting center referrals as of December 1st. 6 were discharged unsuccessfully, 46 total referrals to the ERC. Referral source 67% by probation, 22% children's mental health, 9 child welfare. Okay, this one, ERC completion and recidivism. 13 of 13 that completed the program, 3 recidivated, and out of 13 additional that didn't complete the program, 5 recidivated. Some variables, this grant goes through September of 2023. We've had staff turnover multiple times during the period. It's been kind of a barrier to providing consistent programming and data collection. We have been using the YASI, the Youth Assessment Screening Instrument. School attendance, behavior, academic progress starting to be tracked. And then protective factors through a self-assessment being tracked. And the bottom one, Pine County is going to collaborate. So JDAI is interesting. It used to fall under the Department of Public Safety, and several years ago, it went under the Department of Corrections. And now this legislative session, they've now moved it over to Metro State. Does that matter? I don't know. Hope not.
What's Metro State?
College in the cities. And I think it went under Metro State because the JDAI statewide coordinator teaches at Metro State. So I'm guessing that's kind of why it got moved over there. Maybe it makes more sense. I think the Department of Corrections just wanted to move it. So they had a place to move it to. Metro State said, yeah, we'll take this on. Why is that important? Because, when we entered into kind of an arrangement to have them look at our work through this systems assessment, they had told me right from the outset that, what would you think about the possibility of a contract where we had a JDAI regional coordinator position / ERC director, which I think is a great idea because then obviously we keep the ERC around, even though that federal money goes away at the end of September. So we've had one meeting already. She wanted to wait until July 1st came now until we had a second meeting, and I emailed her this morning. So hopefully we'll get that ball rolling and we can see that through here in the fall. Electronic monitoring, this is a detention alternative, which is, it's a big deal here. It only costs $4,400 for kids to be on electronic monitor this year. There are 10 of them on there for 360 days. We've saved over $1.7 million in placement costs since 2009. A different way of looking at it. We'll save 94,000, almost 95,000 this last year, and only spent $4,400 by putting a kid on electronic alcohol monitor or electronic monitor versus sending them into detention. Most of the time they are on a GPS monitor, the juveniles. Oops. ISP, I spoke of it a little bit ago. That's our intensive supervised probation. This one's a little bit easier to read. 89% of those who have started this program have not committed a new DWI. So as we said earlier, we have the LEAD program, we have the driving with care, the second, usually about the second time DWI offender. Now, if we get a repeat DWI offender, which in the old days you'd call an aggravated DWI, but non-felony level, or those higher risk cases, they get put on an ISP. And no ISP clients have been arrested for a new DWI since so that data on that program is even better than our this year's past data on our Driving with Care program. So intensive supervision matters, when you're watching somebody more intensively. It's labor intensive, but it matters. And we got two really good agents working that. It also saves the jail and jail costs, saves the county. And so the formula is on the bottom on how that's calculated, but $206,000 this last year. And ISP correctional fees have generated $96,000 since inception. In 2022, 5% had some type of sanction, either formal or informal. Sometimes they'll do an informal sanction. Only 12% had a formal probation violation, and half of them were enrolled in an ignition interlock program, which is a goal. And that's a good number. Pretrial, another concern in this county. 438 bail evaluations were completed in 2022, equivalent to 32% of an agent's time. That doesn't include any field visits. And that caseload is oftentimes high risk and pending felony level offenders who ultimately get supervised by the DOC. That number has been pretty consistent over the last 5-6 years. 33% this last year were actually placed on conditional release supervision. So we spent a lot of time doing a bail study on somebody, and then only 33% of the time does that person that you spent all that time on actually hit the street and are supervised by you. So not all of them are supervised by us. 32% were arrested for new charges this last year, and 38% had some type of pretrial violation report filed. Some demographics: 43% unemployed, 70% had a problem chemical use. I don't think that's a surprise, and 7% veteran population. Our adult COG skills is some of that labor intensive work that the agents do to try to change clients' thinking errors. 65% successfully completed this last year. And post 1 year post completion recidivism, 9% with any new offense, and then 33% of those who didn't complete the program had a new offense. So this would tell you that if you complete the program, you have a better chance of staying out of the criminal justice system than if you don't. Lead, 394 adults have completed since we started this program, and 6 kids have completed it. Why would there be kids in there? Sometimes a kid asks, or sometimes a parent asks if their kid can come through and learn from their behavior, and we're okay with that. We don't charge for the kids to come there and observe it. No reoffenses in 2020, 4 last year, and none this year. So those would be first-time DWI offenders. And there's our Driving with Care, 90% completion rate for second or subsequent DWI offenders. So ones that might not rise to the level of a high-risk client that needs to go on with ISP. And then this one, 2020, 100% no new DWIs within 1 year or 2 years. And then this 2021, 98%. Some of our evidence-based work this last year, 2 staff trained to statewide trainers and carry guys and decision points. Again, we're very proud of that when an email comes and we forward it on to an agent, they're got their hand up and they know they have a lot of other things to do, but they're invested in true behavior change and willing to take on additional stuff. To really kind of help out the state, because there's not enough trainers that go around in these curriculums, to be honest with you. So last few slides, how can we keep improving? My part, I want to continue to look upon this community-led diversion, making it more sustainable. I know when Reese and I and Andy and others went down this road with Project Rise, that was always a question, ironically from Andy. how do we keep this sustainable in case you use me as an example, in case Terry Fawcett left and then Andy left. So, but it's important that you don't just invest in people, that you invest in the work that you do. You get more community buy-in, so you're having more community members at the table that are ultimately running restorative justice programs. And it's not dependent on any one person. Can diversion happen before arrest? That'd be a question maybe in the future for the sheriff. I know that's a model that's used in a lot of other places in the country where some of those cases aren't even making it to the county attorney's office. They're being dealt with at the deputy level, and the county attorneys don't even see them on certain crimes. Do we ground kids? Is one of the questions that somebody had out there. Do we include them be part of the solution? I know one of the next steps that we're going to take within the department is having actually a young person both on our probation advisory committee and have a young person on our Project Rise committee. So there's nothing that we're talking there that a young person shouldn't be able to hear, right? And they should, they know what's going on out there, and to have a young voice be part of the solution, I think will be exciting. So both Devin and Sherry have identified a couple that would be willing to do that. Some other opportunities. I've been asked to be one of the 2 MACPO reps on the newly created Youth Interventions Work Group. That's a governor's task force. So I think what they're looking to do in this state is develop some type of juvenile template for things that work with kids. So not everybody's around the map. I think hopefully that'll also mean more counties and places doing restorative justice work than currently are. I met with Becky recently to talk about this new funding that's coming in for crossover youth development work. That's a fancy way of saying that you have systems working together right from the outset with cases. There's a lot of great work that is done currently with the 2 departments on the ground level, just having us kind of work. So we're not working in silos. We're working more efficiently with kids that are crossing over into both systems. And there's going to be money that's out there now. That's kind of the big deal, that there was never money that was associated with that, but now there's going to be a considerable amount of money, but we just have to figure out how to access that there in the coming months. But the next one's interesting to me. Maybe when you give your tribal update in a few minutes, maybe there's something more to be said about this, but so the legislature passed tribal supervision. We don't know what that means. Does Mille Lacs Band do they want to do tribal supervision or not? And that'll be something that obviously my department wants and needs to know, and maybe they don't. Maybe they want to be, some counties want to be like, maybe like a case aide or a tribal case aide, somebody that works with the probation department, but doesn't necessarily want to take on their own tribal supervision type thing. So that's a question that's unanswered for most counties right now. I think ARC has one of their tribes wants to be heavily involved, but other than that, I haven't heard of any. And then continue to seek restorative justice opportunities with kids. And there's funding that's out there for that, considerable amount of funding. And Reese testified on behalf of that bill. So I'm excited to push that forward. Again, I'll continue to look for new funding streams, or what this means in 2027 if local corrections fees goes away. How do we make that up? In the process now of conducting a thorough caseload workload analysis to measure a need for an additional agent. Obviously, the concern with truancy is there. I know Sherry gave the strategic planning presentation recently. My juvenile agent, for example, not my juvenile agent, my medium risk agent for adult who deals with domestic assault. That type of caseload for a traditional caseload should have a national standard would be 80 to 100 clients. She has 132. Hard to do really good life-changing work with a domestic abuser when you have 132 domestic abusers on a medium risk caseload. And then future comp plans. So comprehensive plans for CPO counties have never been required by statute, only if you're a CCA. Now they've got it passed through the legislature that everybody now will have to do a comprehensive plan. And I think it's going to be based on a DOC template. So this could look much different next year based on what kind of information that the DOC wants, but we think we're ahead of the game as far as that goes. And there's that number, 132 for Jamie. This is what was appropriated this year. So I just talked to Kelly a little bit ago about watching when that money starts to come in. I think it's quarterly, long overdue and appreciated. The $150,000 in base funding. So again, I got an email late in the week, last week, I think, that said that 150,000, which we thought was going like right to Pine County probation, that goes to Pine County apparently, which also includes the Department of Corrections. So that base funding of 150 really isn't 150 if it shakes out the way that we found out since. So, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank the commissioners, legislators, Reeves County Administrator, for your support and all your work. This Commissioner Ludwig, this hasn't been no easy task by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, I know, Senator Rarick was involved behind the scenes. I went down to one of the hearings and, Representative Nelson came in and talked to me, and people were just visible and vocal, and people were sending emails off to the Commissioner of Corrections when he wanted to kind of change things late in the game. And so thanks to AMC as well for everybody that's been involved. So I think for the first time in my 30-year career, we've seen the needle move a little bit around funding, and hopefully we'll just look at sustaining. And I'll end it on a positive note. So here's some cool stuff that we did this year. Some fishing and equine assisted learning, and Jamie did some knitting with the ERC students. And so the middle was the panel I was on, but the one on the lower left where has Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, that was actually the guy who actually wrote the research paper. His name is Kelly Nielsen. That was one of his slides. And so I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. They're talking about the Mille Lacs Band in reference to Pine County's work and the development of the cultural community coach and how that's important to involve culture in their work. So with that, I'll take any questions. I told Ryan I wouldn't go for an hour and a half, but we got hung up on corrections fees.
I have one question.
Yep, go ahead.
So included in that funding, there was like some grant opportunities. Is that what you were referring to a couple slides back?
Yeah, so when you talk about crossover youth development model or restorative justice, those are a couple of the opportunities.
Yeah,
right
so
there.
are they going to be competitive? How are they set up? Do you know anything about them yet?
I don't think anybody knows much about them right now and how they're.
Okay.
I know restorative justice is going to be set up for an Office of Restorative Practices. So it'll be, I think that'll be easier, in my opinion, on how to access that money. The crossover youth, I think that, I'm not sure how that's going to be accessed. I'm not even sure what department that's coming out of. I went back and reread the language after I met with Becky, and I thought it was coming out of Health and Human Services, and I don't think, it may not be. So I don't know.
So do you guys have an idea like what area you want to cover? So if I bring that up in the next couple of weeks, or, I don't know how far we're gonna go, but I mean, it's like truancy, or you have something targeted that you want to work on?
Yes. Well, the crossover youth is a big one. I mean, that's a national standard, right? So we're working on cases together with HHS. And then the restorative practices. The reason I have said this anywhere we go is restorative justice works, right? Allowing victims to be part of the process, spending more time with kids around a circle or a table and having conversations. It's taxing work, but it works, right? And that's where the money should be. And Yellow Medicine County was one of the people that testified. Their lack of recidivism is their numbers are even better than Pine County, and so if you look for the places that have done it for a while, and it just works, and more places should be doing it. I know Otter Tail's getting heavily involved in it now as well, but.
Thank you.
I have a question. Sorry,
Go ahead.
you had mentioned meet with the MLBO leadership relative to their interest in tribal supervision. Is that something that you'd be interested in doing soon? Because we have a meeting with them in a couple weeks, and that's something that we could get on there. I know that we talked last time about qualified educated witnesses for ICWA. And Sheena was very receptive and agreeable on seeing what they could work out to get that. So this might be a good opportunity.
Yes, and I think maybe David had a conversation with somebody from the tribe recently, and they hadn't heard of it. And so, which doesn't surprise me, because they had a seat at the table on the committee that Commissioner Ludwig is on, and just weren't always there. So I'm not sure how much all the tribes even know about that, right? That it's an opportunity for tribes now, but like I said, and what does that mean, right? I mean, I think the concern from a county agency is, are you gonna pick and choose which clients you want to supervise, or the county gonna do all the work and then we're gonna hand it off for supervision to you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so even if the Mille Lacs band decided today that they wanted to do tribal supervision, it's gonna be a while until that gets put into place. I mean, if you're gonna do it the right way, you know, but yeah, whether it's me or whether that committee has an initial conversation with them and then wants to me follow up with somebody, yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think the sooner the better. Because I think if you don't know that number, it's hard for me to come to the board about a potential position. When you could add a position, all of a sudden the tribe comes in and says, well, we're gonna take over now because of your numbers are X% of native people. We're gonna shift 4 probation officers to the tribe. You know what I mean? I have to think that level. And can't really do all that work until we know what the tribe wants or doesn't want to do.
I thank you, Terry. I think, you know, we've all learned that the earlier we can intervene, you know, if they never, ever have anything but a stop from the cop to say, hey, nice to see you. That's what we're really shooting for. And so I think that's what we as a board are, you know, that's why we have tried to keep the 4-H thing going as much as we can and encourage kids to be in extracurricular activities, whatever it might be, because that they never get in the system in the first place. You don't have to worry about getting them out of the system.
Right.
Yeah, David.
Carrie, so thanks for sharing that tidbit on the base funding. Do you have a sense for how that will be split? Is it a case count? Is it?
Well,
I mean, of that 150.
yeah, that I don't know. But that might be a question for Commissioner Ludwig through that committee. But no, because we were all under the impression until the end of the last week that 150,000 was coming to Pine County through the probation department. Now, I don't know what that means now. The capitated rate is done on a formula. That money's easy to figure out, but.
Because I think the state was quite opposed to the base funding amount and never indicated that they would be the recipient of a portion of it until after it was approved.
You read that well, yes.
Thank you.
Those stinkers. Well, thank you. And
Yes, thanks for all the work.
thanks, Sherry.
Thank
you, Sherry. All your work too. Thank you much. Work release. Memo, or what is that, joint powers?
Yes,
Got
that's
that.
rods. Yep.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we're just looking to adopt the amendment 3 to the current joint powers agreement with the state for the work release program. This is we had an original one back in 2021, and we've just been doing an amendment every year. They add another 80,000 to it. So right now it just encompasses a max of 320,000 to pay out for the work release program. So instead of rewriting a new contract every time, they just add another 80 each year. So this will be really the kind of the fourth one, the original plus 3. So we just ask for you to acknowledge that and then sign the contract as it was stated in the packet, I believe.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lundgren. Is there questions? Rod, don't go, yeah.
I heard no questions.
Does it go away then at the end, or does it?
The money,
Yeah.
yeah, if it's not spent, it goes away. So it's just there to when we get somebody from the DOC that comes in and says, hey, they're approved for the program, then we bring them on, then we help find them a job and get them ready for release from the state. And our jail programmer helps put that together. And we have a few local businesses that we reach out to, and that's been successful. During the pandemic, we had nobody, and now it's starting to pick up a little bit. I mean, I think we have 3 on right now, and an $80,000 would be 3 people or 3.5, whatever it is, for an entire 365 for the entire year. We're not there yet, but What's nice about the amendment piece is instead of just 80,000 and it's done, it goes away, they're just adding on to it. So now it's at 320. So we actually have a bigger way we can use that. We can use all that 320,
Okay.
not just 80,000 for this year. Does that make sense? So.
And then when we use up the 320, do we come back with another?
Yeah, eventually they'll come back with another contract, that just sits that and we have not used it,
Okay,
all of it in the past, so.
thanks.
Okay. Any other
Any-
questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
If not, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? That passes. We need to schedule some budget meetings, so we're looking at the August 15th as part of the regular board meeting and then come back on the 22nd. And the 29th of August. Those would be special meetings. We should have a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Commissioner,
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Location is fine.
pardon me?
It'll be in the boardroom.
Yeah. Commissioner updates, Terry, Mille Lacs Band.
Mille Lacs Band was really good, actually. We talked about the tribes being able to grow marijuana. And Mille Lacs Band is having meetings with all three of their regions. And so she said right now, Red Lake and White Earth are ready to grow. I can't remember who she said it was in their band. She said if the membership wants it, they'll get it, but I think being supported not to do it in Mille Lacs by their, can't remember who she said.
She, I think, indicated that the chief executive is not terribly supportive.
Right, so, but then she did say if the membership wants it, they will do it, and so, but to hear that Red Lake and White Earth they're just ready to start growing now, and they're just starting to have meetings here, so we'll see what happens with that. And then we did talk about, there's funding for the executive park, that, both Smith and Klobuchar put funding, for that in their bills, so we'll see what happens. She said Staubert did not, so, that's kind of where that's at, but that's the executive park in Hinckley that they're talking about doing, which I think will be a good thing. We did talk about having quality educated witnesses for the ICWA because we don't have them. And so that affects the courts. And so they're willing to, she said she's going to go talk to the tribal elders, which is one of the things in the ICWA meetings that they had talked about was there's so many elders that have a big heart for the kids and for the families that they would be the ones to start talking to. So she was going to see what she could get going for that. And that was it. That's all I have.
All right. Chat.
Jack, we had our big meeting down in St. Paul and I want to do a huge shout out to Sam. They did a creation of foundational public health responsibilities funding workshop to determine how the funding was going to get sent out. And Sam is one of the people on that committee. So that was really great to hear. So we'll have some good support on that. They did talk about all schools must have opioid or they must have naloxone now, which is one of the things that we talked about at the last school meeting. So now to hear that that's actually passed. There was a lot of stuff that was dedicated tobacco prevention funds. Minnesota received most need and rural health advisory committee members. So we received quite a bit in that. It was a good meeting. There was a lot of stuff talked about and some good training that went on.
Snake River Watershed, we'll throw them both together, policy and watershed.
Snake River Watershed, the membership board, we had Kanabec County, I should go over there. Kanabec County hired Joe Kolb to come in and to talk to the membership board. And it was interesting. They're not sure where they want to go. And they're still stuck on the fact that if we don't have this membership board, that somebody else can come in and create a membership board so that they can do levying against the Snake River watershed. And so when we left, my understanding from Joe Kolb was that it's not going to be a big deal, that they're just going to look at the wording on the joint powers agreement and make sure that it's worded so that somebody else can't come in and create that. And so we gave them a month to get that out, and stating that he should be able to have that done in a couple weeks, and then it should be able to get to our attorneys for revision and for them to look at so that we can make a decision at the next meeting in July. And that took the majority of the meeting, was discussion with him to figure out how to do that.
And
And then-
Terry,
Yeah.
just to add, Bowser was at the meeting.
Yes.
And the Bowser position is that there's nothing that can be written in the JPA that would prohibit somebody from separately petitioning to form a watershed district.
Well, even with the membership board, Bowser said that they could come in today and do the same thing, you know, that they could still come in and petition. So it doesn't matter if you have the membership board or the joint powers.
Yeah, I mean,
They have the
anybody
rights.
can petition anything,
Right, right.
whether or not it get done is another thing.
Right, but I just think there may have been some confusion among some folks that this Snake River Watershed Management Board is some legal bulwark against a watershed district. And even John Kolb indicated that that is not the case.
Mhm. Yeah, it started out kind of different, like I wasn't real sure where he was gonna go with it, but at the end, he finally said, no, this is, we can do this, we'll just reword it to make sure that it's worded right. But I mean, I was kind of nervous about where he was gonna go. So, and then we had the joint powers for the Snake River One Watershed, One Plan, and that was just kind of going over some of the issues too, but I mean, really, we can't do anything until we know what's gonna happen with the membership board. So we just went over some of the joint powers that she had questions on, and a lot of it will be reflected when we get those things next month.
East Central Regional Development Commission.
Yeah, it was June 26th. What did he go over? Raises for the ECRDC employees. There was some elections. Glenn Williamson is still gonna represent Pine. And for the revolving loan fund, we went with the two bankers. No, that's about all I got for notes from that.
HRA, EDA,
Yeah, I got some notes on that. In the public comment period, there was just a citizen that lives in one of the property, that was the Sandstone or Finlayson one. I think.
Sandstone Manor.
Maybe Sandstone, just they had some issues with the company, the management company. So they discussed that a little bit, and I think it was just more so. The residents gotta just follow a procedure with, if they have any issues, there's a tag, a complaint card, and it's gotta go through its process instead of. The way they went about it, and there was some. Maintenance issues around there that we talked about a little bit, or that their board did. And then some security issues. That they're working on. Also a little bit, right, Matt, about some properties that are tax forfeited, they talked about.
Yeah.
That they're.
Yeah.
Considering looking at possibly helping the local governments with cleaning up the property and trying to get it back on the market somehow. One is in Finlayson. That's really the main one. And there's one in Carrick now that came up, and there was a.
Carrick is the one they seem more excited.
Yeah, there's a realtor on their board that had just identified that the property could probably get a better value and better use if it was split. And then it would basically divides the costs in half then.
Yep.
Of the cleanup. So that was pretty good to see that thinking, I thought. Anything else you think?
Their insurance increase was 17% or something for their buildings.
Oh,
I had in my head.
Just to go back, the NLX was canceled.
Mhm.
Central Region EMS.
Yeah, I attended that. Well, the good news is they got some funding, so they got $164,000 just kind of base funding annually and for the biennium. The interesting note is that the legislatures, I don't know when this is supposed to take effect, maybe Jeff, you can. But the law enforcement has to carry 2 doses on their personnel of Narcan. You have to have 2 doses. I don't know when that's gonna happen, but that's coming down the pipe. And the use of that Narcan is going up. Otherwise, it was pretty much a general meeting, nothing surprising. But the thing I really want to touch on is the new medical director did a great report. And I just took so he was talking about the drug use and ages and races and stuff. So I just grabbed some highlights. And so like the American Indian population is 10 times more likely to die in an overdose. And the largest increase of use with all the painkiller opioids is 8th grade, is where it's spiking. And the older kids, it's dropping, the 11th and 12th. And then the other thing, this is a lot about youth. 1 in 10 that are using and they're identified. 1 in 10 that are using get help. So 90% don't get treatment. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Who determines if they get treatment or not?
What's that?
Who determines if they get treatment or not?
It's just it's just data that comes through the medical side,
Okay.
so it's just raw numbers, but he had a great slide. It was just too much to even keep up with because we didn't get a copy of it, but it was,
Yeah,
he was clipping along pretty good. And the deliverables, he was talking about out of home placements a lot too, and the impact that, we see that impact and all that. So it was a pretty good meeting. And then the other thing they were really worried about is with fentanyl and all the stuff that's coming in is all these new novel drugs are coming on as a mix in them, which is hindering, they know the naloxone, like I asked the medical director, is, or the Narcan, or whatever you want to call it, it's reducing deaths, but not all the time. They're seeing them change because the drugs that they mixed, the Narcan doesn't work on.
Right.
So it's a constant keep up because they just put a different synthetic in there that it was a pretty good meeting. The grants all came through the CPL grant and the naloxone grants. So the other interesting thing is I brought up is that the training is it's $27,000. You get through that. They call it the training, it's VTR, training resources. But it's not a lot of money. And we have Barb Madison from down here, I think is our rep on the advisory board. So she attended and was texting me. And I don't know, I always worry about our small fire departments and getting training and there's paperwork involved and there's nobody in the office and how that is. It isn't like it's a fully staffed thing. So, so I brought that up. I said, we need in a big rural county, we need our people that are, if we're going to have first responders, to get them trained. And I don't know how to fix that. And the other thing that bothers me is the big organizations like Essentia, they know how to drive in and capture some of that money, which pulls it from the smaller ones in the end. Because but it gets put in the same area, so it's a hard. But they probably don't need it as much, and I don't know. And we train through Pine Tech. Most of your first responders update, they're the deputies, right? I don't know where we don't have our own ambulance crews, but I know we have first responders out there in the fire departments, and I don't know who's training them up. That's what I was trying to find out. And then Pine Tech bills not EMS, they're billing dollars from the state somewhere. So I'm still trying to get this worked out, and I am not getting the answers that I'm saying it's bad, it's getting covered, but for deputies and stuff. So but the naloxone, Pine gets naloxone basically from East Central Regional EMS, and they trained you to use it, and then we use the critical incident meeting if there's a bad incident. You know, Pine gets a lot of help from there. But so I'm just trying to figure out how I can get more deliverables here for training the rural people. So Barb is really on board now to help me, and she's reaching out to all the small ones and what they needed. So we'll see how that goes. That's all I have. Because it's a concern to me. I remember when I was a deputy, you know, you're half hour away and there's a crash. Those people are the first people there. They saved a life, you know, most of the time. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Just a follow-up, Matt. So prior to the base funding that the EMS districts or regions are getting from the state, East Central was really facing the prospect of getting funding directly from the counties, or in essence, probably going out of existence. Is that?
Yeah, it was to be determined.
Yeah.
right?
So this base funding seems like a reprieve, but that bigger question out there, it still seems to be a bigger question out there that I think you're starting to work on with what are the services that they offer us and
I
what is
am
the
working,
value?
that's exactly,
And I would hope that the board is internalizing that and trying to figure out how to provide value to the region. And I was never able to wrap my arms around all of these different regions, but there's a huge diversity amongst the regions. I mean, each one is kind of its own thing. Some of them are very robust and some of them are not.
exactly. And then there's, to me, what sits in the back of my head, I'll just be blunt. It costs a lot to staff that, you know, with that full-time person, computers and this and that, and it's eating up dollars that I think could be used locally. So I don't know if it's a great system of delivery or not, but they help so many people that I don't want to start that argument, but.
But I think, Matt, I'm sitting here listening to you saying, you know, for the amount of money that actually gets to the EMTs that should, you know, the Jeff.
That's my
Estes-
concern, right.
Would we be better off to just do it in the county?
Well, yeah, I don't know, it doesn't,
Yeah,
we
I
don't,
don't either.
we don't contribute any money yet, but I think if they got to a
No,
point where
but-
we were contributing 15 grand a year, we're doing it ourselves. That's, I think
Right.
that we're that far removed from it. Then we would just have to figure out a training system for our fire departments or how that would happen, but.
Yeah, but I think your question,
Right.
put bluntly, is if we took that as
Right.
150, whatever that number of base aid is, and gave our share to Pine Tech, could they just do a better job?
Right.
I-
That's my question. I mean,
Exactly. And they're getting funding from some other stream now.
Yeah, so I hope the regional EMS really digs into that question over the next year or so. Before there's a change in the base funding.
Exactly, because, and I'm not on that advisory committee, so when it kind of comes to officers, so we're just approving what they're divvying out, but they did get a lot of equipment out to small, you know, ditch kits and that kind of stuff, so some of that is happening. But there should be a lot more money available to make that kind of stuff happen across, there's 11 counties in that region. But the big ones that are so busy eat up a lot of it. And we're just as busy. And I don't know if I don't know how to fight for the dollars. I mean, I'm trying, but it takes an agency to request it too. And Finlayson got some, so I know they're pretty active, but I don't know how active Carrick is anymore, or Willow. I think Willow's still pretty active. They're
think
pretty active,
Roma.
so we need to reach out to them some way, and I have to probably talk to them and
Thank you.
figure it out. Thanks, yeah.
Other,
I have a couple others.
okay,
So I sat in through the FTC, they had a meeting that comes through the TNT through the NACO. And it was on all the scamming that's going on. The biggest scam right now is your text messages where they're saying you won something and then you go on there and then that's like the number one scam. But it was interesting because they actually have a case against Amazon right now, Amazon Prime. You can get into Amazon Prime and they'll do it when you're buying something and they'll kind of con you into taking the membership and you don't realize that you're taking the membership until you start getting billed monthly. And then you can't get back out. They're making it hard to get back out. So I thought that was really interesting. And then they've got another one going against Publishers Clearinghouse with some scam that's going on there. Which, those are two big things that, just kind of amazes you that they would be out scamming people and doing other types of things. Fake package delivery is another, that's like the number third. Phony job offers, which I get a lot saying job offers in Hinckley. So yeah, if you hear of anybody that's getting some of these messages, just tell them to ignore them and delete them. Sat in on the meeting that Sam put on for opioid and municipalities. It was kind of sad. We had one municipality that was there, and that was Hinckley City. And but Sam, there was some really, really good conversation that went on about how we can bring this education into the schools. And it was raised as of June 29th. We have 9 overdose deaths in Pine County. So that went up from 27 in 2002 to 22 for 1,000 people at the end of 23. That I think that was I didn't even write down what it was. I just wrote the statistics. So that wasn't very good. But trying to figure out how to go about to help caregivers and families prevent over prescriptions, misuse, overdose, that type of stuff. First responder leadership planning was part of it. So we've got a great health department that's working on this. It was a good meeting. We had for the jobs and training workforce. They were talking about, I think I talked about it last time, that they were going to have the youth go out to the 49ers training center and learn the things that are going on. And so I got Representative Dotseth and Nelson to go and meet me there on Friday and watch the kids. And it was amazing. It was, they had 5 days of meeting with the trades. And when we were out there, it was the pipe fitters. I think Thursday was the excavators. They had concrete. It was just and the kids were really enthusiastic. So it's a good way to bring some of the kids that might be lower income or just have, kind of on a lower scale, to bring them in and help them to see what's available and how much money they can make. And watching the kids' enthusiasm and watching Jeff Dotseth was a hoot. He would just walk up to the kids and, what have you learned? And it was a good way for Barb to be able to talk to the representatives about what this committee actually does and what's available through that process. So it was probably the funnest meeting I've ever had. That was a good one. I also went in and met with Kayla to see how the family resource centers are going on Wednesday. And it was interesting talking to family that was coming out, and they just said, this is so great. We love this. And we're coming all the time, and our kids love it and want to come here, and we're spreading the word. And so I think she's got some really good things coming in that are in the works for that too. It's going to be fun to see it grow.
I stopped last week at the Pine Tech Summer Academy and talked to some instructors there, and that's really a good thing they do.
That,
Really,
yeah,
really good.
yes.
Mr. Chair, I have one more thing too. I should have mentioned, I got a couple complaints on our ambulance availability in the county. Have you had any issue with that, Jeff? And so it's like, and it's not, Essentia's not like they'll make a run somewhere, in the way that things are connected, someplace else is short and they're close and they respond, and then we have something happen in a big county and there's no ambulance. And just the way the world's working now is.
It's a conundrum that.
I know, and it scares me a little bit because we have so many people around here on a weekend and things, so I don't know, what do you do about that? But we don't own the ambulance.
We don't own it, so there's nothing we can do.
We get that report, and I asked him, because I remember when Joe, I said, and he said, we keep one in here all the time. Well, that's not always true.
Well, it might be they keep one in Pine City, but if you've got a call up in Willow River, that's not really going to help them.
I think there's times where there's none in the county
Yeah,
because they're so busy.
well, our county's so big that.
Yeah. So that concerns me just a little, and I don't know how we can track that, but.
Mr. Chair, I think we could start with asking for data, right? And I don't know how connected the data in the dispatch is versus data from Essentia.
Denise has been talking to the coordinators quite a bit about that
I think wait times, I mean, if you call for an ambulance and the tow truck gets there and hauls the car out of the ditch before the ambulance gets there, that's a problem. And that happened in my driveway, basically. You know, that's not acceptable.
And that's something we should be thinking about, you know, as a board, I think.
And then we do have contacts at Essentia that we can follow up with, to have that conversation more directly.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other? If not, check your schedule. And we'll see you in a couple short weeks. With that, we'll declare the meeting